Ryan buys a rental property. Sonia puts the same money into an index fund. 20 years later, after counting every rent check, every repair, every tax break, and every tax bill, Ryan finishes about $4,000 behind Sonia. $4,000 behind, after 2,000 hours of being a landlord. He worked a 20-year part-time job that paid him less than nothing. But before you decide stocks won, here's the twist. Change one assumption, one number Ryan never controlled, and he beats Sonia by $77,000 instead, and every hour he worked paid $38. This video runs the full math on both paths, not the real estate guru version, not the index fund influencer version, the real version, including the number nobody on either side ever counts, the hours. Before we get into the numbers, if you find this kind of honest breakdown useful, hit subscribe right now. Real Math Money breaks down financial topics the way they should be broken down, completely, with real math, no agenda. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one. Ryan and Sonia are both 32 years old, same city, same $70,000 salary, and each of them has $60,000 saved. The only difference is what they do with it. Ryan uses his $60,000 as a 25% down payment on a $240,000 rental property, a three-bedroom house in the solid working-class neighborhood. He takes a 30-year investment mortgage at 7.5%, and yes, that is higher than what homeowners pay. In 2026, regular mortgages sit around 6.5%, but banks charge landlords a premium of half a point to a full point on top. His monthly principal and interest payment comes to $1,259. He finds a tenant at $1,900 a month. Ryan does the napkin math every landlord does. $1,900 coming in, $1,259 going out. $640 a month in profit. He feels like he just gave himself a raise. Sonia takes her $60,000 and puts all of it into a total stock market index fund. One purchase, one confirmation email, no tenant, no keys, no mortgage. At the neighborhood barbecue, Ryan talks about his property for 20 minutes. People ask questions, people are impressed. Sonia mentions index funds. The conversation moves on in about 11 seconds. Remember that barbecue, because 20 years from now, the person who was more interesting at the barbecue and the person who built wealth more efficiently are not the same person. Year 1. The napkin meets reality. Here is what Ryan's napkin left out. Property taxes, about $2,900 a year on this house. Landlord insurance, about $1,600. The national average landlord policy runs close to $1,500, and that is 15 to 25% more than regular homeowners insurance because tenants are a business risk. Maintenance and future big repairs, the standard budget is 1 to 1.5% of the property's value per year. On this house, call it $3,600. Some years it's a $200 faucet, some years it's a $7,000 furnace. Over time, it averages out, and it always arrives. Vacancy. The national rental vacancy rate is running around 7%. Figure the property sits empty about 1 month per year once you include turnover time. That is lost rent plus cleaning, listing, and showing costs. Add it up, and Ryan's real operating costs run about $10,300 a year before the mortgage. Now run the honest version of the napkin. Rent for the year? $22,800. Operating costs, $10,300. Mortgage payments, $15,100. Ryan is not making $640 a month. Ryan is losing about $217 a month. At 2026 investor rates, this is the part almost nobody says out loud. A typical leveraged rental property is cash flow negative in its early years. Ryan is paying out of his own paycheck for the privilege of owning it. Sonia's year 1 is a single sentence. Her $60,000 grew to about $66,000. So why would anyone do what Ryan is doing? Because Ryan is not playing for cash flow. He's playing for 3 things Sonia cannot touch: leverage, principal paydown, and appreciation. And those 3 things are about to do real work. Year 5. Leverage starts earning. By year 5, Ryan's rent is up to about $2,100 a month. His costs rose too, but his mortgage payment did not move. It never will. His cash flow is still slightly negative, but the gap is closing every year. Meanwhile, three quiet forces are compounding for him. First, appreciation. At 3.5% per year, right around the long-run national average for home prices, the house is now worth about $285,000. Second, principal paydown. His tenant's rent has covered most of the mortgage, and about $10,000 of debt is gone. Third, and this is the one that makes real estate people evangelical, leverage. Ryan put down $60,000, but the appreciation happens on the full $240,000. The house gaining 3.5% a year means Ryan's actual money gained closer to 14% a year. The bank's money worked, Ryan kept the gains. That is not a trick. That is the single most legitimate argument for real estate, and any video that pretends otherwise is selling you something. Ryan's equity at year 5, roughly $115,000. Sonia's portfolio at year 5, roughly $97,000. Ryan is winning. On paper. But year 5 is also the year Ryan replaces a roof, turns over a tenant, and spends a Saturday in small claims court over a security deposit. His spreadsheet does not have a column for that Saturday. We're going to count those Saturdays, because by the end of this video, they change the answer. The year 20 numbers are closer than either side wants you to believe, and the tiebreaker is a number neither side ever puts on a thumbnail. Make sure you are subscribed so you catch the follow-up on combining both strategies. Hit subscribe and let's keep going. Year 10, the hidden ledger. By year 10, Ryan's property is worth about $339,000. His loan balance is down to about $156,000. His equity, roughly $182,000. But his cumulative cash flow over the decade is still about $6,000 in the red. 10 years in, the rent checks have not yet fully paid back what the property has cost him out of pocket. His cash flow finally turns positive for good around year 7, but the early deficit takes years to claw back. Sonia's portfolio, at the market's long-run average of about 10% per year, is sitting at roughly $156,000. She has done nothing, checked it maybe 40 times, spent 0 weekends on it. Count everything at year 10, equity, the cash flow hole, the tax deductions, and Ryan is ahead by about $35,000. Leverage is working. Now, open the hidden ledger, the one Ryan does not keep. 10 years of self-managing one property, tenant screening, showings, repair calls, the roof project, 3 turnovers, 1 eviction scare. A fair estimate is 8 hours a month averaged across the calm months and the chaos months. That is roughly 1,000 hours over 10 years. Ryan is ahead by $35,000 and behind by 1,000 hours. He is running a part-time business and calling it passive income. He could hire a property manager. That costs 8 to 10% of rent, roughly $2,000 a year, which would have made his cash flow hole deeper for even longer. Either way, the cost exists. You pay it in money or you pay it in weekends. There is no third option. Year 20, the full settlement. Let's settle this completely. Both of them cash out at year 20 and we count every single dollar, including the taxes both sides usually skip. Ryan's house at 3.5% appreciation is worth about $478,000. Pay off the remaining mortgage and his equity is $372,000. Add 20 years of rental cash flow and the tax savings from depreciation, real estate's famous tax shelter, and it is real, and Ryan's gross position is about $441,000. Then comes the part every real estate video skips, the exit. Selling costs 6%, and the IRS shows up twice, once to claw back a piece of those depreciation deductions and once for capital gains tax on the appreciation itself. Put the full exit bill on screen, about $93,000. Ryan's final after-tax position? Approximately $348,000. Sonia's portfolio grew to about $404,000. She sells too, pays her capital gains tax like everyone else. Sonia's final after-tax position? Approximately $352,000. Ryan, $348,000. Sonia, $352,000. 20 years, two completely different lives, and Sonia finishes $4,000 ahead. Now the number this entire video exists for. Ryan spent 20 years landlording. Call it 2,000 hours of his life. 2,000 hours of screenings, showings, repair calls, and turnovers. And after all of it, he ended up $4,000 behind the person who did nothing. His hourly wage as a landlord was negative. Not small, not minimum wage, negative. And if you think 8 hours a month is too high an estimate, it does not matter. Cut the hours in half. Cut them to a quarter. He still finishes behind the person who spent zero. If that number surprised you, drop a comment with what you think a landlord's time is actually worth. And subscribe. The next video runs the math on doing both. That is the number that never makes the thumbnail. Not the rent check, not the equity, the wage. And it comes with a bonus Ryan never asked for. 20 years of concentration risk. Half his net worth parked in a single house on a single street, one bad tenant away from a very bad year. If the video ended there, it would be doing exactly what index fund influencers do. Cherry picking. So here's the other side with the same honesty. Change one number. Make appreciation 4.5% instead of 3.5%, which strong metrums have genuinely delivered over long stretches. Ryan's house is now worth $579,000 at year 20. Run the entire settlement again. Selling costs, recapture, capital gains, everything, and Ryan's final position is about $429,000. Now Ryan beats Sonia by $77,000. His landlord wage jumps from negative to about $38 an hour. 1 percentage point, that's the whole swing. Leverage multiplies whatever the market gives in both directions. Flip it the other way for Sonia. Use 8% stock returns instead of 10%, and her after-tax position drops to about $247,000. Now Ryan wins the base case by roughly $100,000. So, who wins? Whoever guessed the future correctly. Which is exactly why anyone who tells you one side always wins is not doing math, they're doing marketing. And Ryan holds advantages this model still undersells. He never had to sell. He could refinance and pull cash out tax-free. He could do a 1031 exchange and roll into a bigger property, deferring both of those sale taxes entirely, a move stock investors cannot replicate outside retirement accounts. His tenant paid off most of his mortgage, and 10 more years in, he owns a debt-free house producing income for life. Sonia holds advantages the model still undersells too. She could sell any amount, any day in 30 seconds. She was diversified across thousands of companies instead of one address. And she only earned that 10% because she never panicked through 2 crashes. And the data on real investors says many people do panic, sell at the bottom, and destroy the very returns this model assumes. Neither of these is a bad investment. They are different jobs with different pay structures. One pays you for patience, the other pays you for labor, leverage, and tolerance for concentration. Here is the honest decision framework. Real estate wins when 4 things line up. Your local rent-to-price ratio is strong, monthly rent at or above 0.8% of the purchase price. Our model used 0.79%, and Ryan barely broke even. At 1%, his story changes completely. You will hold for 15 years or more, so appreciation and principal paydown outrun the transaction costs. You treat it as a business, real budgets for vacancy, repairs, and replacements. And you honestly value your time, or pay a manager and accept the thinner margin. Index funds win when the opposite is true. Your market's rent ratios are weak. You want your hours back. You cannot absorb a $7,000 surprise in a bad month. Or you know yourself well enough to admit you'd rather do nothing perfectly than do something imperfectly. And the answer almost nobody gives, the wealthiest version of this story, is usually the person who does both. Property where the math works, plus relentless index investing on top. That is a different video, and it's coming. The next time someone tells you real estate always wins, or the market always wins, ask them 2 questions. Did you include everything, including the taxes at the end? And did it pay you per hour? Ryan worked 2,000 hours and finished with $348,000. Sonia did nothing for 20 years and finished with $352,000. In a slightly better housing market, Ryan wins by $77,000. In a slightly worse stock market, Ryan wins by $100,000. The point was never that one side always wins. The point is that neither of them knew, going in, what they were actually signing up for. Now you do. If this video gave you a clearer picture of how these two paths actually compare, not the guru version, not the influencer version, but the real version, hit like before you go. It genuinely helps this content reach more people. Subscribe to Real Math Money for weekly videos that break down financial topics completely, honestly, with real math and no agenda. And drop a comment below. Are you team property, team portfolio, or team both? And landlords, be honest. What does your hourly wage actually come out to? Because the answer that includes everything, including the hours, is the only answer that actually matters. See you in the next one.